Creatures of the Night. Chapter 2. Arbiters. One. The sun was hardly visible above the hills at 5:15 p.m. when Cameron awoke. He yawned and pulled himself upright before laying right back down in pain. His head throbbed like he had a hangover, though he couldn't remember drinking the previous night. That wasn't to say that he hadn't, just that if he had, it was way too much. His head lay on the soft pillow, while groggy eyes scanned the room, squinting extra long at the dark corners with abstract shapes in them. A hint of something was there. The idea that he was forgetting something important from the previous night. His eyes slammed shut and a meaty hand rubbed the dark bags beneath them as pupils rolled back in search, trying to see deeper into his tired brain. Whatever the idea was, it wasn't presenting itself, and searching for it only made his headache worse. His body wanted to go back to sleep, to rest off the pain, but something in the back of his mind told him he needed to rise. So after much deliberation, he did. The harsh beam burned his retinas as he flicked on the light of the bathroom. His eyes adjusted to the disgruntled expression in the mirror. Cameron's dark hair was greasy, pulled back out of his face and slick like a mobster. His unkempt beard made him hard to mistake for someone serious, however. He splashed water over his aching face before opening the cabinet to retrieve his toothbrush. His toothpaste was stale and crusty as he forced it from the tube and onto the bristles. He had told himself he should grab a new tube off the rack from work every day for about a week, but it slipped his mind every single time. The stale taste was mostly washed from his mouth by the black coffee he brewed in the kitchen after a nice, long shower. The kitchen itself was a mess, and had been for the better part of Cameron's ownership. The sink was filled with old dishes, and the kitchen table was covered in long overdue library books and stacks of mail, much of which he never bothered to read. At this point, he just tried to keep himself busy at night, as that was when most of his problems seemed to arise. Whichever room on the main floor he went to, he felt out of place. He couldn't explain what it was, just a feeling that reminded him of when he accidentally sat in the wrong class in high school, or when he'd gotten on the wrong flight in Dubai and realized too late he was not headed to Illinois. It just felt wrong, especially without his mother there. So empty, soulless. Not that he believed buildings had souls, just that this house definitely didn't. Cameron always felt such a comforting, warm feeling when he came home to visit his mom before she started getting sick. The house usually smelled of freshly baked bread, and he would be greeted by a hug every time he opened the door. That is, if Emily wasn't already working in the garden when he arrived, which she often was on the bright and sunny days that used to feel so common. The contrast from then to now was blunt and stark. The house was an unrecognizable shell of what it once was to him. He was living in a corpse. Darkness finally settled over the sky when Cameron found himself sitting in the living room. He sat as far as possible from the turned chair that he hadn't touched since his mother herself had sat in it. Turned on next to him was a tall lamp with a floral pattern on the shade. The light did a great job of breaking up the incessant darkness that felt more alive than he did, but it also made the other half of the room that housed his mother's chair that much darker and creepier. Cameron found his eyes drawn to the chair the longer he sat there. Something, he couldn't tell what, was off about it, and he wasn't willing to bring himself over there and take a closer look. Instead, he reached for the TV remote from the center console and switched it on, hoping to get some reprieve. The static settled on a soap opera that his mom probably would have watched. He switched through channel after channel before settling on the calmest thing he could find. A nature documentary.
Here in the Northwest, there are all shapes and sizes of birds.
A voice in the documentary began, showing clips of majestic raptors soaring through open blue skies.
However, only one reigns supreme in the dark of night.
The camera cuts from the usual blues of a daytime shot to the jarring blacks and greens of a night vision lens. Depicted in the video was a low-to-the-ground shot of a mouse sniffing its way through the leaves of a forest floor. In a whirl of leaves and feathers, the mouse was gone in an instant, with nothing but a disturbed patch of ground in its wake.
The owl is king of the nocturnal skies. It uses its excellent vision and hearing to determine the location of its prey from hundreds of feet away. No creature of the night is safe from this apex predator.
Cutting from shot to shot, the camera depicted the sheer force of the bird's hunting abilities. Darting between the trees so skillfully to capture a moth in its beak. Pulling a rat from its precise location beneath the snow. The camera settled on a shot of the bird looking over its shoulder and peering directly into the camera. Looking directly at Cameron. It was at that moment that his eyes shifted from the screen and back to what he had been staring at previously. The chair. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he was missing when he looked at it. Something about the image that just didn't add up. He inspected it a little longer when it struck him. In the window that the chair looked out of was a near-perfect reflection of the room that Cameron sat in. The only difference was that in the reflection there was someone sitting in the chair. He rubbed his eyes as the TV chattered on and looked again. It couldn't be, he thought. Only it was still there. In the dark reflection of the window, he could make out the shape of a person, slightly hunched, sitting there, He couldn't believe his eyes as he began to feel his heartbeat quicken, slamming against his ribs. At this point, he couldn't tell if his scared mind was just making up details, but the reflection seemed to be looking back at Cameron. Not through the reflection as he viewed it, but sitting twisted, looking back over the chair at him, so that only the back of its head was visible, as its real face was, presumably, pointed at his. Cameron's eyes focused on the spot where its head would be, and he got a shiver up his spine. It was almost as if he could feel the figure's gaze, though he could not make out anything beyond the reflection. With a shaky hand, Cameron grabbed the TV remote off the table and turned the volume way, way up. The loud TV volume did less to quell his fears than he had hoped as he rose to his feet and began to back out of the room, watching the reflected head turn to keep eyes on him.
Senses fit for hunting that are so keen they could hear practically anything. If they wanted to, one could tell which room of the house you were in from a mile away. It could follow you anywhere, due to its dainty wings and silent flight pattern. You would never even notice.
The TV roared as he threw himself outside and slammed the door behind him. The terrible chill up his spine began to subside as he stepped on the gas and soared down the wooded driveway and onto the dark country road. It was only once he hit the gas station a mile up that he stopped to take a breath, realizing that there was still sweat dripping from his brow. He envied the worker inside the store, wishing his shift was still on so all this could have been avoided. The fuck is wrong with me? He asked himself. It was just a trick of the light. God. What, I can't even be cool alone in my own house? Can't watch one show on TV? I have to go crazy over some shit in some reflection? Cameron put his head down on the steering wheel, hoping that his logical mind would come up with some kind of explanation for the fear he just fled his house from. But there really was none. He felt it would be best to just return home like everything was normal. But he couldn't bring himself to do it, to just turn the car around. Instead, he hopped out and made his way to the phone booth on the side of the gas station. He slid a couple of quarters into the slot and punched in the only number he could think of. It rang for a few moments before being answered on the other end. "Hey, it's Cameron," he said. Can you meet up for a drink?" 2.
Just as we worship God,
Father Elric said.
these people give their devotion to other arbiters. Devotion is a very powerful thing, and can be dangerous when misplaced. It is one thing to be indifferent about your faith, to let yourself drift away from God. It is another thing to get on your hands and knees and worship something truly evil. Something that will only use you, to bring pain and destruction to those you should love. These people are not only unjust in what they have created, what you saw, all of it is completely unholy.
The father took a long sigh and leaned back in his chair, allowing William to process some of the information he had just been bestowed. His eyes scanned the newspapers strewn about the counter, and things began to fall into place. All of them had a theme of missing persons, dead bodies, and strange activity. Interspersed between the newspapers, William noticed an unusual amount of missing pet posters as well. His mind was brought back to the conversation he had with the Washingtons about their unusual amount of missing dogs. What do the animals have to do with it? William asked, finally. He watched as the father stirred in his chair, his eyes scanning the papers on the table much like Will just had.
Well, as you know,
he began,
us humans were created in the image of God. And by combining a human soul with the substance of a non-human creature, the result is something defiant of God. It is my belief that these creatures are nothing more than puppets, set to a greater, unholy purpose.
Father Elric scanned the newspapers again, this time picking up the one titled, 3 Dead in Shoshone. What kind of purpose is that? William asked.
God wishes he knew. What I can tell you is that it's happened before.
Digging through the pile of newspapers, the father pulled out a yellowed paper and placed it next to the newer one. The title read, 3 Dead in Minetta. Escaped circus bear the culprit? Reading the article further, William noted how the attack was blamed on an escaped circus bear that had become an urban legend. Bobo the Killer Bear, he was called, said to have been driven mad by the strict circus schedule and abusive staff. During his act of balancing atop a ball, the bear went crazy and rampaged his way through the crowd, escaping into the Minetta wilderness. A week later was the subsequent attack that mirrored the one in modern day. 3 bodies shredded to bits, with the heads of the victims buried neatly in separate holes. The date of the paper was October 14th, 1977. Once he finished reading, William raised his eyes to Father Elric again. Now the old man was hunched over a map of what appeared to be their immediate area. On it, he had marked out multiple locations that coincided with the incidents in the headlines. William watched as the father placed a red pin on the forest behind the Washington's house. It completed an arc of red pins that was complemented by another set of black pins, arching in the opposite direction.
Ever since the first headline, I've just been obsessed with figuring this out. There are just too many similarities for it to be anything else but some kind of do-over. These,
he gestured to an arch of red pins,
are the incidents reported in modern day.
Meanwhile, these ones.
He gestured this time to the accompanying, nearly complete ring of black pins.
Are the suspected locations from the last set of incidents.
The two incomplete circles met each other in a shape akin to a Venn diagram. So, what is it? Like, what's the point of terrorizing a few small towns with monsters?
It's hard to say what exactly their twisted end goal will be, but so far it started the exact same way it did last time. Crazy, violent, seemingly random crimes around the state. Mass cover-ups and confusion when the truth is asked to be presented. I denied the truth for too long last time, and trusted the word of the church over the word of God. This time, I have to stop it.
The father's eyes fell back on the map as he began to mull it over again. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? William asked. I mean, shouldn't we be talking to the police? Father Elric looked at William with laughter behind his eyes.
The police don't believe any of this. Neither does the press. I mean, can you blame them? You would probably think I was crazy too had you not seen what you did tonight. I've seen people made out to be mad. Their reputations ruined. Their lives ruined. For the average person, it's not something that's easy to accept. There is no sugarcoating it. There are monsters, who knows how many, just outside the borders of town.
William held a hand up to his bandaged arm. The father had a point. It would have been almost unbelievable just a few hours before.
I mean, you and I really might be the only two who have seen these things and made it out alive.
You've seen them too? William asked, growing more amazed at his elder by the minute.
You've got good instincts about you, kid.
Father Elric said, rolling up one sleeve of his baggy shirt. He revealed a massive scar that spanned from his elbow up past his shoulder. The wrinkled skin around the spot was still black and blue.
I was terrified too. Ran like hell the minute I got the chance. But your fear gives them power over you. Remember that.
Three. For all the reasons Cameron usually hated the bar scene, he found comfort in the dingy building. The obnoxious rabble of drunk people and cheap jukebox music gave him enough of a distraction to forget about the slight shake in his hand. He sipped the glass of bourbon he had ordered from the gruff-looking but incredibly friendly bartender. His disinterest in sports was suddenly gone as his eyes were glued to the TV screen watching the Dallas Cowboys attempt and fail a touchdown. Some drunk men behind him cheered and commented on the game, but he wasn't actually interested in listening to the specifics of who won or lost. All that mattered to him was how long it could keep him from thinking about what he'd just seen in his house. Or rather, what he thought he saw, as he kept trying to convince himself it must have been a trick of the light. A small part of him, however, was convinced it had felt something more than seen it. And that feeling was the one thing he could not shake, no matter how many times he tried to rationalize it. Something was there. "Well, Blakey," a voice said from behind Cameron that warmed his soul and almost made him forget the invisible intruder. "I never thought I would get the call from you to meet me at a place like this." The man gave a firm slap to Cameron's back and took a seat down next to him. "And drinking bourbon, too. Who hurt you this time, man?" "It's good to see you too, Jim," Cameron said. "Yeah, I just needed to get out of the house. Work got called off, so I was just gonna be sitting up on my ass all night at home." "Oh, right. Because you're still working the graveyard shift at Old Man Trowell's gas station, aren't you? Man, why do you torture yourself like that anyways? Can't you find a day job someplace? Anywhere is better than that joint." Jim called the waiter over and ordered a Coors Light. "Yeah, I don't know," Cameron said, swishing his bourbon around the fancy-looking glass he was served. "I guess I just can't sleep well at night. Haven't been able to since I got back from service, so need to fill the night somehow. Were you ever attacked in the night or something? Left with some kind of stress disorder?" Jim asked. "I've heard about it all over the news, man. You should get checked out by a psychologist or whatever." "No, we never really saw that much action. I was just a medic, remember? I spent most of my time in the base tending to guys who got shot in the leg and stuff. One guy came in who got shot straight in the head and was still walking around." "Dude, what? Did he drop dead? Where was he shot?" "Right around here." Cameron motioned towards a spot above his right eye. "From what I know, he's still alive to this day." "Nah, you're shitting with me. Did you have to remove the bullet?" "Well, that's the best part. Guy was so crazy he pulled that thing out himself before he even got there. Just stumbled inside rambling about how he got shot in the head and how his buddy was still out there with a wound in his leg. He went back to get him before I could administer any anesthetic. Dude was an animal." "That's wild," Jim said, mindlessly rubbing the spot above his eyebrow on his chubby face. "Man must have an incredibly dense skull." "Not as dense as yours," Cameron said. "Yeah? Well, at least my dense ass can go to sleep so I don't have to torture myself in some dingy dinge hole every single night for minimum wage." "And what fine establishment mistakenly employed you this time?" Cameron asked. "Moneta Cinema 10, Jim said, giving Cameron a side eye whilst trying not to crack a smile. "Oh, come off it, asshole. That place is known for having rat turds in the popcorn. It's hardly a step up from working at the old Quick Fix all night." Yes it is. You obviously don't know anything about the art of benefits, my friend," Jim said as he drained the last of his beer in a large, unnecessary gulp. "Why would I want a job where I'm stuck doing boring shit all night, when I could get access to all kinds of worthwhile stuff at the cinema? I get to watch free movies, eat free snacks, and best of all, I can work mornings when no one's coming in." "And what? Smoke in the employee lounge like you did at the grocery store? Or better yet, in the projector booth while the movie's playing? People probably leave wondering why the newest Star Wars looks so much cloudier than the others." "No, dude. I'm not trying to get fired from this gig. I smoke out back where no one checks. Uh-huh. Cameron nodded, feeling his suspicions confirmed that Jim was once again on the brink of unemployment. Well, my job has benefits too, you know. I get to spend my time reading the paper for free. Plus, you can smoke all shift long if no one shows up. Logan never checks the stock, only the money you made. You're right though, it is kind of a shithole. I guess it just feels like the right place to be, you know? 'Cause before that job, I would just spend my nights outdoors, wandering the streets and the woods. I guess this way it feels like I'm doing something productive with that time. It felt selfish, you know? All those nights in my own head. Cameron's eyes fell into his glass of bourbon, and he swirled it in his hand. "Alright, dude, I'll bite," Jim said, finally. "What's got you so slumped up here? I mean, I haven't seen you like this since your mom died. I know the anniversary is coming up, and it's not my mom, it's just... I don't know. Just what, man? You don't look happy, Blake. I saw it on your face the minute I walked in here. Like you were thinking real hard about something. It reminded me of that time Susie dumped you right after high school. Just mulling it over. Absolutely stewing in that brain of yours. Besides, dude, you haven't called or come by in months. You never return any of my calls or messages. And then you just tell me to pull up here of all places, looking like... Well, I know I'm not one to talk, but you look like shit. You really let yourself go, buddy. I'm worried all this work has you depressed. I'm not depressed, man. It's just my stupid house. That's all. Just a house? Jim asked, running a chubby hand through his blonde hair. Dude, I get that you're feeling guilty and all because your mom left it to you, but couldn't your Uncle John look after it? I mean, he still lives up on Potter Street, doesn't he? Well, that's the thing. He wanted me to have it too. Apparently, it was one of my mother's dying wishes. Like, yeah, I'm sure he would take good care of it, but I don't want to dump all that on him. Like, if I can't do this one thing, like, I don't know. Well, what's wrong with owning it anyway? It's a nice house. Afraid it's haunted? Cameron's expression was like ice as all the blood fled from his face. Fuck off, dude. You gotta be kidding. Another moment passed, and the sentiment solidified. Dude, this is unreal. Blakey went to war, but he's scared of the ghost in his attic? Come on, man. I have to know what happened. Cameron's face turned to Jim's, without changing from its monotone expression. I don't know. I know it sounds crazy, dude. But it was after I woke up this afternoon. I had a really bad headache. I was already on edge from some dream I had. Anyways, the house just had this feeling to it. Like it was alive. I felt it breathing. Blood pumping through the veins in the walls. Eyes watching me everywhere I went. I decided to watch TV. You know, try and drown it out. But then I see this reflection, or I don't know. There's someone... It looks like there's someone sitting on the other side of the room. In my mom's old chair that faces the window. He swirled the melting ice around in the bottom of his glass before meeting Jim's eyes yet again. There was this owl on TV, because I was watching some nature doc about birds. I swear it froze on this shot where the owl looked back over its shoulder at the camera. It was staring at me with these huge yellow eyes like headlights, and it just felt like whatever was sitting in the chair, those were its eyes too. It wanted me to know that it was there. To know that it was watching. Four. As the sun rose on the horizon of the chapel graveyard, the nocturnal animals that occupied the space under the darkness of night found themselves seeking shelter for the daytime. Bats gobbled down the last of their flies before returning to roost inside the bell tower. Possums and raccoons finished their scavenging and crept back into their holes. A small brown field mouse slinked its way across a tombstone. The sunlight shifted as the earth turned, allowing the beams to illuminate the words carved into the slab. Here lies Father Patrick Morgan, 1953 to 1977. The mouse made its way down the curved side of the stone and landed in the grass with a soft plop. It weaved through the long blades towards the neighboring structure and huddled up against the cold stone wall. Through a tiny crack in the wall, the mouse squeezed its flexible body until it was met with the cramped, dark space it called home. Below the mouse, through a thin layer of wood, two sleepless men sat at a table. Much like the creatures above, they had been active all throughout the night. But unlike the little mouse that was now curled up and sleeping soundly in their ceiling, their worries did not end with the crack of dawn.
They must be guarding something up in those woods.
I'll go back and take a better look. It won't be bad out there in the daytime, right?
It's still dangerous. If I had known what was happening at the Washingtons, I would have never sent you, William. That being said, I see there's little I can do to dissuade you. We will give the Washingtons a visit today and ask to have a look around their property. From what you've told me, they should be more than happy to let us.
Obviously, there was the existential fear that he would be torn to shreds and eaten if he returned. Since it had gotten a taste for William's blood, Prince would likely be waiting to finish the job, whatever that entailed. Another part of him, however, felt like he had failed the couple. He'd acted like a coward when he got back to their home, and probably left them with more fear than they'd had when he arrived. He told them he would return, and it was a promise he intended to keep.
William, I just want you to know, you're a good, caring man, one who wishes the world was better for others. That's what makes you a good priest. But if you get wrapped up in whatever's going on with these woods and these other places, you need to understand that there are some people in this world that have removed themselves so far from the graces of God that they can no longer feel the warmness of kindness or kinship. They only see it as something weak to be exploited, juiced for every last drop it can provide. These are the types of men that would create what you saw out there. When we meet them, you need to see them for the vile creatures that they truly are.
But, William started, didn't you say that anyone could be saved in the right condition? That no one can truly be lost from the light of God?
For lost men, yes. Gamblers, drinkers, beaters, killers. There's no sin some good confession time and devotion can't cleanse away. These men, however, are not lost. They are found by something else. They are fed violent, hateful thoughts until evil festers within them, and like a weed it blocks out all the light from the graces of God, claiming the soul in their twisted darkness. Don't bother with these men, William. Anyone who is twisted enough to create a monster like the one you saw last night may as well be one of them. Just remember that.
William had a hard time picturing someone so evil and irredeemable. But he saw the look on Father Elric's face that said he knew what he was talking about. The old priest grabbed a worn journal off the table and stuck it inside the pocket of his jacket. The small book was frayed and discolored, like someone had spilled coffee on it.
Well, looks like it's about 7 a.m. The Washingtons are probably up now, don't you think? That is, if they slept at all.
Elric chuckled, but William's face remained stony and full of guilt. The older man's face shifted to more of an understanding expression.
Well, just by choosing to go back, you've shown a lot of bravery. Bad things, lots of them, are going to happen. Bad things that are completely out of our control. The best thing that we can do is be strong, be bright, and stand tall. We are the servants of the Lord, and there is much work to be done. Now come, let's grab you a new robe before we set off. A servant of God shouldn't be seen in such a drab state.
William was fitted with one of the father's old shirts and a new collar that shone as bright as ever. As the two men ascended the stairs to exit the church, William stared at the face of their Jesus statue. Unlike the red moonlight that accentuated the pained expression he wore the previous night, Jesus' face was more clear in the light of the rising sun. In that clarity, William recognized the satisfied look in his eyes. He was in pain, yes, but he was at peace because he knew what it was for. It was to take away the pain from everyone else, to suffer so they didn't have to. The two got into Father Elric's car and took off down the road as William considered what he planned to do. If he was scared, he wasn't going to show it. If he was going to die, he would die for God.
I know you're scared, kid,
Father Elric said, as if reading his mind.
But always remember, Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
Five. Okay, dude. Are you sure you haven't watched any scary movies lately? Like Poltergeist? Jim asked as he climbed into the passenger door of Cameron's car and shut it behind him. No, man. What the hell is that, anyway? I haven't been to a movie in years. Cameron responded, closing his own door and starting the car, as he was the more sober of the two. Are you sure you want to come over and stay the night? He asked. Are you seriously asking if I'm too scared to come over? Yes, I gotta come see this haunted house of yours. Besides, it's been too long since we had a sleepover, Blakey. The car pulled from the brightly lit bar parking lot onto the quiet, dark country road. It was nearly midnight, and the moon was nowhere to be seen in the sky, making it particularly dark. You've really never heard of Poltergeist? Jim asked, breaking the silence. Yeah, no idea what you're talking about. It's some kind of freaky shit-your-pants movie, I presume? Yes, dude. How did you miss it? It was the horror flick of the summer. Whatever, man. Anyways, it's basically about this house that's haunted by this ghost that's trying to fuck with the family that moved in. It starts off just messing with them a little bit, moving chairs and items around, mimicking voices behind their back. Over time, though, the ghost starts getting more and more comfortable fucking with the family, and starts to make the house into like a monster that's basically trying to eat them and add them to its ensemble of dead ghost people. But anyway, what you described seemed to me like someone scaring themselves after watching some shit like that. Still, I can't believe you've never heard of it. As the two pulled into the driveway, Cameron suddenly remembered the nature doc that had been on full blast since his departure. Sure enough, a yellow glow still danced across the glass. Other than that, the house appeared lifeless, dead as always. Cameron turned off the car and was startled as Jim jumped beside him. Oh shit, what was that? Did you see that? Jim's eyes were focused on the roof of the house, and he leaned forward as if to get a better look at the dark sky above them. After a moment of examining the dark night together, the two men locked eyes, and Jim leaned back to massage his face in his hands. Alright, now you're scaring me, Cameron said. Are you just fucking around? What was that? Nah, man, I'm just seeing things. Looks like you got to me after all, huh? Jim gave Cameron an unsure smirk as he opened the car door and stepped out into the night. Cameron followed him, but not before making a final glance at the dark, pointed roof of his house. It appeared ordinary, moonlight reflecting off the barren shingles. Walking up the path to the door, the two men could gradually hear the TV audio that Cameron had left on full volume as he fled the building. They opened it, and Cameron stepped off to the side. "Ladies first," he said, smiling. Jim stepped inside and immediately made his way into the living room. Cameron closed and locked the door behind them as Jim began turning down the volume on the TV. The channel was still going on about the owls of North America. The documentary had gotten to the point of explaining different species and their unique diets. Cameron took a lap around the house to turn on a sufficient amount of lights. The uneasy feeling he often had subsided as he moved from room to room. It seemed that all he needed was a little company. That, or he'd just given the house what it wanted for the time being. When he returned to the living room, Jim was sitting in the armchair in front of the window. His expression was blank as he watched the birds on TV swoop through the sky. For a moment, Cameron got a bite of fear. Was Jim already being affected by the house? Is this what he got for bringing other people into his problems? Just as these thoughts began to manifest, Jim turned his head and gave Cameron a grin. "Are you just gonna stand there, or are you gonna grab the remote?" he asked, gesturing to it on the table in front of Cameron. "Unless you want to watch these creepy owls all night." At that moment, the owl on screen looked over its shoulder at Cameron and stared with those intensely large, yellow eyes again. "No, you're right," Cameron said, picking up the remote. "Let's find something else." Right when he began looking for a new channel, however, they all faded to the familiar tune of the national anthem. The room was bathed in a bright blue light. "Oh, I forgot how late we were up. It looks like most of the channels are shutting off for the night. The TV was kinda creeping me out anyway." Cameron turned it off and threw the remote on the couch. Jim stayed silent, still staring at the screen. "What's your problem? Are you really this committed to messing with me?" Cameron asked. "That's the opening shot of the movie," Jim said. The blue screen national anthem playing on TV. You know, at one point in the movie, the ghost starts talking to a little girl through the screen. No other family member can hear these TV voices, just her, and eventually, they lure her and take her into this dimension within the TV. It's not really explained, nor is it explained why she's the one that's chosen. Maybe because her innocence makes her so easy to manipulate. Maybe her lack of will made her spirit weak. Maybe the ghost just wanted to inflict as much pain and fear on the family as possible, and kidnapping her was the best way to do it. Jim's eyes finally peeled from the dark screen and met Cameron's. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually believe you. There was something more in that TV. I could feel it. Something welcomed me like that little girl was welcomed. I'm sorry, Cam, but I think you might have an actual poltergeist on your hands." 6. A trio of knocks rang out for the 5th time on the Washingtons' front door with no answer. The couple's station wagon was unmoved from its spot in the garage where it had been since the previous night. William could see lights on inside as he peeked through the thin, white curtains. It appeared the kitchen light was still on, along with a lamp in the small dining room. There was no movement, from what he could tell.
Rob? Meredith? It's Father Elric. Is anyone home?
He called through the closed door before turning to William, whose face had been grave ever since they got no reply the first time. He had the sinking feeling that the couple weren't answering because they weren't home. They were in the woods, looking for the dogs William had all but confirmed were indeed out there with his performance the previous night. It's hard to see a bloody man walk in with a dog collar in his hand and come to practically any other conclusion. What do we do, Father? I think it's possible they went into the woods last night. Because of me. William's eyes were glued to his shoes.
Don't blame yourself. Remember, none of this is our fault, or because of us. We are here to do what we can. The fear you showed last night was nothing but a human reaction. You must have the power to forgive yourself as God has forgiven you, so you can do His work.
Father Elric placed a hand on William's shoulder, and he felt a familiar warmness build within himself. A faith that he could be stronger, that he could put everything he ever did behind him and be a righteous tool for the right hand of God. Then let's go help them now, he said, and brushed Elric's hand from his shoulder. For the first time since they arrived, he turned to face the tree line. The wooded land emanated an ominous tone that was so clear he could almost hear it. The day was overcast, but even from where they stood, the interior looked incredibly dark. Unnaturally so. Like all of the shadows were bottled inside. We have to go after them, Father. Please. We have to help them. I know they're in that terrible place.
We will, son. But here, first let's walk around to the back and try the rear door. We shouldn't assume the worst just yet.
William obliged and followed the older man, but he felt sure the Washingtons wouldn't answer either door, no matter how hard they knocked. When they got around to the back, they found that the door was already left agape. The men exchanged an uneasy glance before Father Elric called inside, though the house was clearly abandoned and silent aside from the incessant clicking of their grandfather clock. William was about to say something when he felt a hand placed on his shoulder again. When he turned around, he found the older priest's gaze to be fixed out across the back field. Following his sightline, the subject was not hard to discover. Just outside the reach of the pine branches that swayed in the wind stood a white dog. It was completely still, just staring at the two men. It appeared perfectly normal, all 4 feet on the ground to William's relief. "What is it doing?" he asked.
"I don't know,"
Father Elric said, and whistled at the dog to no response.
"It looks like it wants us to follow it."
"Should we?" William asked. Without answering the question, the father began walking. He recited a psalm as he trudged across the field, William joining at his heels.
"God is our refuge and strength, a very pleasant help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea."
Once they were a few yards from the dog, close enough to see the gray spots that dotted its dirty white fur, the animal turned around and darted into the woods. Father Elric followed it beyond the tree line without skipping a step, and so too did William. As soon as the pair walked beyond the boundary of the woods, he became confused by the time of day. It was still early morning when they stepped in, but the forest was so dark that it felt like twilight. It wasn't that the trees were blocking out the light either, because when William stared above at the open sky, it appeared a dark indigo, rather than the bright gray that it was on the outside. Father Elric did not react to the shift in atmosphere, opting rather to repeat his psalm again. The dog scampered just a few yards in front of the pair, stopping occasionally to wait and make sure they kept pace. William was unsettled by the way their guide moved. It appeared normal, yes, certainly more normal than the one he met last night. But there was still something off about the way it seemed to crawl instead of trot like a dog should. It almost looked like how a person would act trying to imitate the animal whilst wearing an extremely convincing costume. His attention was torn away from it when a structure came into view through the trees. He didn't remember seeing it the night before, though it was extremely hard to tell where he had or hadn't been. The building looked to be a log cabin, an old one at that. A light shone through the windows and a crack in the door, as well as a missing spot in the roof. Father Elric's hand slipped into the pocket of his long black trench coat and stayed there. The cabin seemed to grow in stature as they walked closer, appearing more grandiose and intimidating with each step William took. Finally, the white dog reached the front door, which sat ajar, and slipped in through the open gap. For the first time since they began following it, the two men stopped to talk. "Do you think the Washingtons are in there?" William asked. Before Father Elric could answer, the door creaked open. Instantly, the two were hit with the stench of rot that wafted from the interior. From behind, strong arms wrestled the two men to the ground, holding their faces towards the glowing entrance. From it stepped a figure, draped in a long, green cloak that dragged along the ground. "Oh, you two gentlemen were here to see the Washingtons? They were just stopping by to catch up with their dogs." The figure laughed maniacally and stepped aside to reveal the old couple on the floor of the cabin. They both appeared partially eaten, chunks of skin and muscle missing to reveal bone, organs, and sinew. A pool of blood collected around them and ran between the slats and the floorboards, turning them into crimson rivers. Lapping up the blood and feasting on their flesh were two human-dog hybrids. A gray-haired one was hunched like a frog over Rob's corpse, peeling flesh from his arm with a blood-stained mouth. The thing appeared to be starving as it gorged itself on the man's body. The other creature was less focused on its meal, rather intent on staring William down. This, he recognized, was Prince. It had dark spots on its brown fur and was seemingly reunited with the bright red collar that he had pulled off in their scuffle. The monster was holding Mrs. Washington's head in its large, clawed hand. An open wound in her temple trickled blood that Prince licked mindlessly. Judging by the look in its eyes, it would rather William was the one bleeding from his skull in its hands.
Lord have mercy.
Father Elric was able to choke out before the beast behind him pulled a gag down over his mouth. Another creature did the same to William. Father Elric, boy does it pain me to see you haven't croaked of old age yet, the figure in green said, stepping outside and mercifully shutting the door on the grisly scene. You know, your day was coming, but you were so kind to deliver yourself and your new apprentice directly to our doorstep. Skip our whole fucking plan. 2 birds and not even a stone tossed. You know, I could have them slash both your necks right now. But where would be the fun in that? I mean, this is quite the opportunity you've given me, Father. The chance to show your God what 2 of his finest men will do to each other when given the slightest nudge in another direction. A violent direction. Take the young one out back and tie him up. The old man and I have some catching up to do inside. The half-man, half-hound that held Elric hoisted him to his feet and began dragging him towards the foul-smelling door. Before they brought him inside, William was able to lock eyes with the priest one last time. His eyes said the words so William didn't have to hear them. They said,
Be not afraid.
But as he was violently yanked inside the cabin, and William started getting dragged back into the woods, he was rightfully fucking terrified.